So it brought up after Boston beat the Pacers. Uh, basically like Jaylen Brown being like he feel like he's unappreciated and stuff like that, and he thinks that a lot of other people get praised on that he thinks that he's better than or can't do half the stuff that he could do on both sides of the ball. And basically, then I was like, get up. They was out. I was asking if he was underappreciated or whatnot. Um, and I was like, man, I was like, the answer Jaylen Brown's question of like, or not question, but to talk about his statement of what he does on both sides of the ball and other people getting praised for. I think that is true, especially because now, granted, we don't know who he has in mind with that. We don't know if they're top players or if they're just, you know, I was like that second, third tier players. But so we don't know what he has in mind. But I will say that considering what he can do on the defensive side, I do think that that is why he also feels like that. And to go to the question of is he underappreciated? I think so too. I mean I think that he is. Um, I was like I think for a good long time that he doesn't get the credit or look that he deserves in way of being talked about. Not necessarily with money, because I was like, he got paid. Not even with necessarily the NBA honors and stuff, all NBA and stuff like that, because I'm like, he shows up on it. He's on there like pretty much all the time. Is he first team? No, but he's like second or third team a lot of times. So I think he is. I think in that regard, yes, he's not, but talked about no. Um, I think there's a bunch of reasons for that. I think that, and this is also going to be the reason why I think he contributed to why he's underappreciated. I think one, the biggest answer is Tatum, duh, because Tatum is looked at as the main guy, number one, the option. He's the one that's like we see with the commercial. We see him. We talk about it being his team. We talk about how much pressure on him to get the team over. Now, granted, I like when I heard that one, I think that's sort of uh, like yes, it is because of like we see him as this guy, and it's like his team and stuff. But some of that is also because he had to shown up in a lot of like he'll give us stuff and then he won't. He'll flip flop on how he is. Sometimes he's aggressive. So I was like, I think that's why because I was like he's so inconsistent. Whereas like Jaylen Brown, I was like to the opposite of that, he's pretty much consistent. And I was like, he's pretty like. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he hasn't at all like at times not also shown up at times either. But I'm like he pretty much is going to give you a steady diet of point of like this amount of points where you're going to get at least about like 20 from him. I feel like will it always be efficient? Maybe it depends on what the game call. Whereas like Tatum will just have a dud sometimes. But going back to I was like it's some like a lot of it's Tatum because Tatum has more of the skill set that is like a wow factor. I was like the way he shoot threes, the way he so effortlessly get like to his shot and his dribble package and all that other stuff. He has a more wow factor to me than Jaylen Brown does. I was like Jaylen Brown to me. I was like his play style is like really like going to the rim. He's a lot more rugged. I was like his jumper doesn't look as fluid as Tatum does. I'm like it's a good jumper, but like it's not as pretty or whatever like that. His game isn't as pretty. I was like I feel like it's a lot more bullyish or whatever. And while Tatum does does play defense, gotten better on defense, that's always been Jaylen Brown's sort of like hat though. Like ever since he sort of came into the league, it's always been like he's sort of a defensive guy, and he had developed his offensive game, and that's one reason why I feel like he's underappreciated. Because I'm like, I don't. I felt like everybody looked up and was like, oh yeah, Jaylen Brown can score, but it's like no, he like Jason Tatum. I was like, yeah, Tatum. He had to like grow into a defensive player, just how Jaylen Brown had to grow into an offensive player, and I think that to me, I think it's harder to grow into an offensive player than a defensive player, especially like Tatum. Like he's not like the most athletic guy, but he's hella athletic, tall, lanky in a way that I'm like his skills like he can be a defensive player if he just try. I was like Jaylen Brown. I'm like him. Like if you look at him from the beginning to now, it's amazement. Like his type of like his growth makes me like he sort of makes me think of Jimmy Butler, like where, and I was like Jimmy Butler was underappreciated for a long time until he got to Miami. That's how I sort of feel about Brown. It's like look at him like from his threes to his mid range to step backs, turnarounds, his handling package. I was like, we used to make fun, like everybody used to make fun of him for going like he couldn't go left, and now it's an afterthought because he worked on his game. Um, and I'm not gonna lie, I was like when the Celtics were first starting, when they had Kyrie on the squad and he wasn't able to play, and it was Brown and Tatum. I was like, I like Tatum coming out of Duke, and I thought Philly should have drafted him, which they should have, but that neither here nor there. And I think I was like, cause he just had the option to pack it. But I will say that sometimes he does lack in spots that make you just cause the talent is there, and I think that's also the difference between him and Brown is that I think that Tatum also get a lot of the looks because I think he is more talented than Brown, but I think Brown is the one that's more skilled because he has to be. He doesn't have the same like fluidity in his game. He had to learn how to do a lot of this stuff. Same thing I think like Kawhi, where it's like Kawhi had to develop his offensive game. Um, but I was like he's underappreciated because of how we see Tatum, and we just annoyed at Tatum. Like once something sticks with sort of with people, especially players in sports and stuff like that, and things, you just going to see it as that. And if we said that you're the man of the team, then you're the man of the team. Because I forget when. I think it might have been before they went to the finals or something like that. I actually was like talking, well, not here, but I was like the people I knew or whatever, that I think Jaylen Brown is probably the best player on the team. I thought he was better than Tatum. Now I was like that could be up for debate, but my thing is that I was like he was better at defense than Tatum was, and I'm like what Tatum gives you on offense. I'm like, and at that time I was like he gotten way more efficient and stuff better now, but I was like at that time I was like they got similar numbers. They still got similar numbers now, but I'm like for what Brown does and what Tatum does, I'm like Tatum still just look flashy, but Brown gives you the same thing without all that extra. You know, uh, when they faced Golden State, I was like Brown was pretty much in. He's the one that was really holding them down in nearly like that whole series. Even though Tatum had spots in the series leading up to that. Um, yeah, no, I think instead of looking at the Batman Robin thing, it's a really 1A and A1 kind of thing, because they're really nip and tuck of player. Like I think Brown is at the spot now. If he wanted to, he might be able to. Like I think he could be on like a number one option. Now, to what degree? But I think he could be. But I think also too, I think the reason he can feel slighted because it's like we talked about Zach LaVine for like a few years. I mean, like now everybody's starting to be on a little on the downside of him the last couple of years, but Brown better than Zach LaVine. I was like, we get enamored with Trae Young because he can shoot the way he can shoot the ball, but Brown better than Trae Young. Um, Booker, so I mean, and I'm not saying like he's like, that's up to you how you want to feel, but I'm like, to me, I'm like, these are players that I'm like, I feel like everybody would be like, oh, they in the top 10, maybe not LaVine, but you get what I'm saying. and Brown wouldn't be. But if you sort of look at it, it's like you have a Brown is always going to give you something. He's not going to have no duds like that, or he's going to give you on defense and rebounding. So I think he. I was like, I do think I was like, should he feel like that? Sure, everybody should, I guess, feel like that in some aspect. But I was like, I think it's also a fair question because I was like, I think kind of right when you sort of look at other players that we talk about and it being them team and them leading the team and stuff like that, and we don't ever talk about Jaylen Brown, just Tatum. Like Tatum could like just doing this by himself. He also is always on a good team, and I think that sort of like messes him up. Uh, and I was like, cause it messes up Tatum on like really getting MVP type votes sometimes. Even I was like, don't I mean, like for somebody like him with the way his team wins, even if he doesn't win an MVP, he's always like fourth. And I was like, that number doesn't happen when you constantly have your team at the top of the standings all the time. Um, but yeah, no, I was like Brown. I think is right there with Tatum, but I think just I was like, but I think because it took Brown a little bit longer to get his offensive footing, where Tatum sort of came in and was already like he was dunking on LeBron. I was like, we was already showing his mom at the games. I was like, he already had. I was like, he come from Duke. He was a lot more highlight reel with the offense. I was like a Kobe guy, all that type of stuff that I think. And I was like, we gave him the story, we gave him the narrative that I was like, it sticks with you. Where it's like that's our perception. That's why he gets. That's why we'll willing to give him the blame. You know. So yes, I do think Jaylen Brown is underappreciated. Um, and I think for a while now, because I was like, he shows up in these playoffs to me a lot more than Tatum sort of does, or whatever. I just think that his game isn't flashy. Is sort of the main reason. And I mean, of course, our media talks about anything. But yeah. Let me know. Do you think that is the case? I was like, could I get think? I was like, I gave you a couple, but I was like, there's a lot more other people I could think of that. I'm like, he's probably better than. I was like, you know, or he went to or he joined this team, game changer, kind of thing. But anyway, let me know what you think. Until then, I'm out.